Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley has criticised the so-called dangerous narratives surrounding the police shooting of Chris Kaba, emphasising that online discussions often focused on Kaba's ethnicity.
Well, he warned that such commentary could undermine justice, as it was based on rumours rather than evidence presented in court. He also highlighted that Kaba's gang was linked to 11 shootings just in the past year.
OK, well, let's get the thoughts of retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville. Mike, what point do you think he's trying to make here?
Well, the Commissioner's trying to defend his officers, and well done, Sir Mark Rowley, on that, because what you've noticed, it's not just firearms officers, it's people who are the officers who take driving courses, who are expected to drive at high speed in busy streets, or officers who use taser or use force on arrest. Officers feel that they should be scrutinised, what they do, but it's an unfair level of scrutiny that they face. And I think the Kaba case really is a problem, because we've got all these left-wing politicians who view everything through the prism of race. So if a white officer shoots a black suspect, it obviously means that the police officer is a racist, and the black guy is an innocent, expectant father and potential architect. And this narrative is followed through. And it's really bad for the police. It doesn't give them, they lose faith in what they can do. And also the public get a worse service, because, of course, officers are going to hesitate now before using firearms, which they carry to keep the public safe.
Yes, because, Mike, there were so many prominent politicians who jumped on this case as an example of institutional racism in the police before they'd seen the facts, before they knew anything about Chris Kaba or indeed his violent past, before they knew anything about this particular gang that he was a primary member of. How are police supposed to deal with that when even politicians who are supposed to be sensible and responsible jump on the bandwagon?
Well, it's truly shocking, isn't it? I mean, we've had people put in jail, haven't we, for allegedly spreading misinformation about the Southport attack. And yet, when other people do it, when prominent politicians come out and basically say that the police are racist and the guy they shot is an innocent chap, that is as much misinformation as was put out regarding the Southport attack. And it is people like Dan Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn, Sadiq Khan, all these individuals should apologise to the police. And they should appreciate that the officers who have to make these terrible decisions, can you imagine being the officer who has a split second to make that decision? And then it's the decision he made in a split second. Lawyers and activists pour over that for months and years. You know, something that happened in a fraction of a second. Our officers have got to believe that the public and politicians support them when they do the right things.
And the peculiar thing here, Mike, is I've been looking back at some of the messages that people were making at the time, before this went through the proper tribunal, before the officer was found innocent. Bel Ribeiro Addy, the Labour MP, was celebrating when the officer was named before any due process. And in her statement, she said, it shouldn't have taken public pressure to make this happen. Which to me, reading in black and white, is her saying it was pressure on the police, it was pressure on the authorities from people like Bel Ribeiro Addy MP that named this officer outside of that sort of protection the judicial process should probably have.
And it's continual. So if you look at the decision to charge by the Independent Office for Police Conduct, the man responsible there, Sal Nazim, has admitted that there was, there's a real pressure. He felt real pressure. There might be a riot if they didn't charge him. This is a man who's got no investigative experience whatsoever and has made his entire career on finding allegations of racism. So another person looking through this, everything through the prism of race. And what this means is that the black community in particular will be put at risk by this, because we know that most young black men are killed by other young black men. And if the police are not stopping and searching, they're not targeting the right suspects because they step back, they don't feel confident, they hesitate, then ultimately it will be the black community who suffers the most.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard detective. Great to have you on. We're going to be speaking to Susan Hall, actually, who's been questioning Susan Hall, what exactly is her position?
She's an Assembly member of the London Assembly, but she was the Tory candidate for Mayor of London.
She was indeed, and she was asking Sadiq Khan multiple times in the London Assembly to apologise to Martin Blake, the sergeant, over the shooting of Chris Kaba. So we're going to get her perspective on all of that. Sadiq Khan refused to apologise.
We're going to turn to the Mayor of London now, who himself has come under fire after he repeatedly refused to apologise to Martin Blake, the police officer, the firearms officer, who was cleared of Chris Kaba's murder.
Yes, this comes after the London Mayor offered his heartfelt sympathies to Chris Kaba's family, friends and the wider community following Martin Blake's acquittal.
So let's take a listen to what Sadiq Khan had to say after being pressed on the issue.
Do you like to apologise to the police officer that has been found not guilty? And would you like to apologise for the whole attitude around this right from the beginning?
Well, can I put on record my thanks to all our officers, particularly our firearms officers, who do an incredibly difficult job under extraordinary circumstances, under a unique set of pressures. They'd be the first to accept, as indeed all police officers do, that it's really important in a democracy we have a proper system of checks and balances in relation to how the police are held to account. There is an issue in relation to the system of accountability for firearms officers, and that's one of the reasons why I fully support the review being done by this Home Secretary.
Waffle, waffle, waffle. I asked you a very simple question. Would you like to apologise to the police officer that has now been found not guilty by the jury? Yes or no?
I think it's really important to support our firearms officers, but it's really important to make sure there is a system of accountability.
You're sounding like a parrot, Mr. Mayor. Just answer the question.
OK, well, there's that testy exchange. Shall we now speak to Conservative member of the London Assembly, Susan Hall, who was in that video clip pressing Sadiq Khan on this very issue. Susan, thank you very much indeed. You were asking Sadiq Khan there to apologise for essentially the attitude he displayed over the Chris Kaba killing and also to the police officer involved. Did you get anywhere?
No, one never does with him. He always deflects, blames somebody else. At the end of the day, what I tried to do from the beginning was to find out exactly when he knew the history of Chris Kaba and what his briefing was and when he got the briefing. And he said he couldn't remember. Well, anybody that's in politics knows that if there's an issue in the area that you're a politician in, let alone the Police and Crime Commissioner, you are given proper briefings so that you deal with things properly, if you like. And right from the beginning, the only thing he's ever commented on is a life cut short, his whole life ahead of him. No comment about the firearms officer whatsoever. And that's just not good enough. He knew all the background to this. He would have been much better keeping quiet. I totally accept to give sympathy to a family of somebody that has been killed. I get that. But there was no balance for 2 years, and it's not good enough.
Could it be argued that the Mayor has a very, very busy agenda, doesn't necessarily know every detail of every case before him, and sort of the natural instinct of a Mayor of London is to offer sympathy for those that are grieving? Could it perhaps not be any more complicated than that?
Oh, Tom, how often does a firearm officer actually shoot somebody in London? You know, how often does that happen? He, of course, knew the background to this. He should have been balanced in his comments because people listened to what he said. And if you look at that, look at somebody from MOPAC, which is the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime, actually said that this was the head of community engagement, said particularly concerning for us, given trust and confidence is already incredibly low, and particularly for black communities. It's a very worrying time for us. We're talking about a young man in his 20s. He was engaged, had a baby on the way, and it goes on about we have to fight for racial justice. I mean, that element of it was in everything, and it's quite frankly not good enough. He should have been putting oil on troubled waters as opposed to making comments like that was stirring up really issues. He was intimating at times that Chris was the one that was innocent. He should have said, if you are asked by a police officer to get out of a car, just do it. You won't be harmed. We all know, and we heard yesterday from the Commissioner, we'd have all been much happier for him to have got out the car and served a sentence, because they were also looking at that. Everybody would have been happier.
Susan, just lastly, what do you make of what Mark Rowley had to say about all this, saying that the focus on Kaba's ethnicity created rumour and innuendo which could embolden those who work against the public? Who do you think he was talking about there?
You'd have to ask him. All I know is he has had to sit back while his officers have listened to this for 2 years. I can't tell you how many letters I've had today, emails I've had today from firearms officers, present and past, saying thank you for standing up for them, because no politicians are. They all just went immediately to the side of the person that was shot. And we have to have balance here. It is not fair to our firearms officers or to the Metropolitan Police in general. There are bad ones in there. We all know that. 35,000 frontline officers, 35,000 human beings. There are going to be problems. But in general, in 99% of the time, our police officers, thank God for them, they go into situations you and I, Emily, would not want to go into.
Well, absolutely. Susan Hall, thank you very much indeed. Conservative member of the London Assembly who pressed Sadiq Khan on this very issue in the London Assembly. I mean, just if you cast your mind back, just the leaps that were made, people just assumed this must be an example of institutional racism. That police officer must have been a bad person.
Before seeing,
knowing
of
the
course,
facts.
the video of the car being used in effect as a battering ram.